what do you think is more difficult, right? What we put the animals through, whether it's slitting their throats, bolt gunning them, keeping them in cages, abusing them, enslaving them, or you having to go a different aisle in the grocery store, or you having to do maybe, an hour or two of research to see what foods you could substitute with what. What do you think is more difficult?
What I think is the most difficult thing personally for me now is the circumstances I find myself in and just how I go about handling them for my long-term success. When I am on my own, it's a conversation I'm going to have with myself, and I know I'll have it, and I'll do what I think to be the right thing at that time.
Awesome. So do you want to know why you should be vegan?
I'd love to know.
Cool, man. My name is Brandon.
Nice to meet you, Brandon. I'm Joe.
Joe. All right, awesome. So I guess the simplest question is, to start, would you say you're against animal abuse?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And do you have any pets? Any companion animals?
I have a mini schnauzer. He's 2 years old. His name's Ross.
Okay, is that a dog?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and would you be upset if somebody shot your dog in the head?
Depends on the day, but
Okay.
he could be a little shit sometimes.
Sure.
Sorry.
But generally.
Yeah. Apologies.
No.
But,
You could say whatever you want.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, he could be a little shit sometimes. He just, like shitting on the floor in the living room is kind of a lot, or, second you leave, he barks, and you're just trying to like grab your shoes and come back.
Sure.
So he could get on my nerves, but like I wouldn't like go up to him and like, take him out.
Yeah, like if somebody did that, you'd be upset about it.
I'd be pretty pissed. Yeah.
Okay. And do you recognize that like your dog, they have like their own personality?
Yes.
Right? So like they have their likes or dislikes, like they have their little shit moments, or they piss or
that's
whatever.
my homie.
Okay,
Ross.
that's your homie. Okay. So pretty much, first of all, veganism is, we reject the exploitation of animals, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a diet. We want to stop viewing animals as like slaves, essentially, for human use, right? So that's for entertainment, clothing, food, whatever, right? So pretty much what you see in your dog, pretty much all animals have it. Definitely all mammals, like your dog. Birds, like chickens, like other birds. Most fish. So what is stopping you from kind of seeing and respect, like extending that like respect and moral value that you have with your dog to other animals?
Well, it definitely is a conversation that I've had with a lot of people, to be honest with you. The biggest thing for me is that soy is an estrogenic. And as much as I'd love to be able to just say at the end of the day, like, stop eating meat, it's a very easy idea. But at the end of the day, when you've grown up for generations and generations on like steak and potatoes and like the same thing all the time, the gabagool, it's a little tough to just make that switch. And then when I try to make the argument with myself, I say, okay, what is worse? Because at the end of the day, I'm fighting for self-preservation. So I think about all these alternatives that feature soy, which is a heavy estrogenic. We're already at low testosterone levels, generally speaking, at least lower than historically. And I'm like, as much as I want to change, I'm naturally resistant to change. Like, I feel bad doing it too, but it's like, it's hard to change, and I'm lazy.
So you made two claims there, right? Number one, you said it's hard when you've tradition, right? You kind of said it's hard when you've grown up that way. Look, I get it. I'm from first generation American. I'm from a Russian family.
Okay.
Very heavy dairy, very heavy meat diet. When we're just talking about diet, they're also into wool clothing, leather clothing. So there's a lot of changes or things you have to adapt, right? But at the end of the day, tradition or culture isn't, would you agree with me that tradition and culture isn't really a good justification for an action, right? So just because we've always done it, doesn't mean we should continue doing it, right?
The thing I would say, because I do agree with you there,
Okay.
the thing I would say that's most important to recognize is that some people find it harder to see like the light in the storm, like the eye of the storm, and find it when they've grown up with something.
Sure.
Like when all that surrounds them is a certain thing, they're not only conditioned to do that thing, but any resistance pulls them back like a magnet to where they started from.
Absolutely. I recognize that people have varying levels of difficulty with change, with adapting new ideas. I just want to make sure we're on the same page that no matter how difficult it is, it's not a justification for an action.
Right. It's definitely not like a because of this, therefore I should do
right.
this.
Okay, cool. So,
yeah.
And then the next thing you said, soy is estrogenic. Number one, you can be vegan and not eat soy, right? There's pea protein, there's rice protein, there's plenty of other foods that don't involve soy. But soy actually is heavy, so there's a lot of vegan foods with soy. if I were to give you peer-reviewed research disproving the myth that soy is estrogenic, because what soy has phytoestrogens, which are actually beneficial for human health, right? It actually doesn't raise your mammalian, because we have mammalian estrogen, it doesn't raise your estrogen levels. In fact, soy consumption is linked to higher testosterone, because vegans, there was a study where vegans had higher free testosterone, and there's no negative effects of soy consumption. So if I were to give you, studies disproving that myth, would you drop that belief, or?
Absolutely. As long as the results of that research were obviously credible. Like, if I look to the top and it's like WebMD, it's like, no, brother, sorry.
No, peer-reviewed studies.
But definitely. Peer-reviewed studies, 100%, as long as, like I said, the justification's there for the research, yes.
And what's funny that you mentioned about your concern with estrogen. So, soy has phytoestrogen, which is plant form estrogen. People are scared of it because it has the term estrogen in it, but it's a phytoestrogen. Do you know what actually contains mammalian estrogen?
No.
Dairy. So dairy is huge because it's meant to be essentially like growth formula for a calf to turn them into a huge fucking cow and give them all the hormones and things they need. So if you're concerned, and again, I'm not necessarily saying that if you drink dairy, it will affect your testosterone negatively. But if anything, like if there should be any concern, even like speculating mechanistically, it would be with the milk of another animal, not with soy products. Because again, it's a totally different substance. It's a plant form of, it's called phytoestrogen.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to do a little more reading.
Yeah, I have sources. I'll give you a card after this. So I guess from there, right? So let's for sake of argument, let's say you do the research, you find out, oh, okay, I was wrong about soy. Soy actually is perfectly fine, actually beneficial for human health. What would be stopping you, again, from, breaking through that barrier of, oh, I've always done it this way, and doing the right thing and adapting values? Because it sounds like you have vegan values generally, right? It sounds like you recognize animals should be considered morally. You wouldn't want your dog bolt gunned in the head. And we have plenty of other food. You said you're fighting for preservation. In a way we are, but in the modern world, right here in Plymouth, I mean, we got tons and tons of food available. So what else would be stopping you from stop not viewing animals as, yours to use as like slaves?
Self-resistance. I am lazy,
Okay.
to be totally frank with you. I'm resistant to change. I tend to be pretty lazy, and even the slightest changes I find difficult. Like, different types of towels. I started using a Turkish towel in the past 2 years, and like it looks great on paper. It looks great when it's sitting on the corner of my bed like it's a throw blanket. But when I'm using it, practically speaking, because I'm not used to it, I'm like, I don't like it.
Sure.
I'm naturally just resistant to change, and that's my own fault. That's my own flaw that I'm working on, but that is my reason, if I would say it for myself.
Sure. So let me ask you this, because if the context was, instead of like being lazy and being brought up on like animal flesh, right? You were brought up on, let's say, human flesh, right? So let's say, hypothetical, where there were a group of humans being bred and raised for food, right? And that's what you've always eaten. Your dad ate it, your grandpa ate it, you were taught to eat that. Would you have the same attitude, or would you find it easier to break through and actually make the switch?
It depends on my level of self-awareness, really. I mean, if you take the story of like Soylent Green, for example, where everybody's eating Soylent Green because they all trust the source, but they never dug into the source itself. And they just continue to do the same thing over and over and over again and never ask, where does the food come? And it comes from humans at the end. Spoiler alert there, but it comes from humans in the end. And the main character there, I forget his name, but he realizes Soylent Green is people. It's the famous quote, Soylent Green is people. And
yeah, let's say you knew it was humans. Like, just like in this, everything else equal. It's human flesh, except it's human instead of animals.
Well, when do I find out that it is?
Right now, tonight.
Tonight.
Yeah.
So at 22 years old right now, I probably shouldn't say that, but...
Well, no, not that you find out tonight. Obviously you know that the animals you're eating at the store, it's animal flesh, right? But you never really gave it any thought, right? Because that's what you've always done, right? But one night, some guy who's a human rights activist comes to you and says, hey, let's talk, right? You're agreeing with his points. You recognize that that's the right thing to do, but you have this resistance to change. Do you think that, do you think in the human context it would click quicker?
I think It would honestly probably click the same for me. I mean, maybe a little quicker, but I tend to generally view things like everything is a living being. I value my dog as much as I value my family at the end of the day. It's not like, if my house, God forbid, were burning down, that I'm gonna, have to be like, oh, I'm definitely gonna get my brother first over my dog because that's my dog. Like, no, I'm trying to get everybody out.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, we're all sentient. We all have a will to live. We all can feel pain. So I agree with you. I think morally, there's really no priority other than like personal relations. Like if you want to save someone else, but like morally, I think we should all be weighed the same. I agree with you there. So what I'm getting from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm getting from you is you don't really have a moral justification for why you, I'm assuming, are going to, or hopefully not, but are going to continue contributing to this. Your kind of excuse, lack of a better term, excuse, is that you find it hard to change.
I would say I find it hard to change, and just the environment I'm in, I know that long term it'll, provide me well. Like my parents are more resistant to change than I am. So at the end of the day, what they put on the table for me as I'm, just getting like my first big boy job, they make more than I do. They're the ones who fill the fridge. They're the ones who cook what's in front of me. And until I leave, that's what I have for my choices. And I really don't want to leave right now because it's fiscally not a good decision for me. And long term, financially, it definitely is a good solution to stay at home for a bit.
Sure. And, in terms of family, like, obviously everyone's family is different. My family, I brought to their attention veganism, and after, a little bit of time, now they only cook vegan. So, definitely people do change, especially if you're committed enough, if you recognize that it's wrong enough. But what I would say is, like, if you recognize that something is wrong, you should do the right thing. I understand it may be difficult, and one day, I know you're staying at home now, but one day you will be on your own, and you will have to make these decisions yourself. And even though it may be a little bit difficult, what do you think is more difficult, right? What we put the animals through, whether it's slitting their throats, bolt cutting them, keeping them in cages, abusing them, enslaving them, or you having to go a different aisle in the grocery store, or you having to do maybe, an hour or two of research to see what foods you could substitute with what. What do you think is more difficult?
What I think is the most difficult thing personally for me now is the circumstances I find myself in and just how I go about handling them for my long-term success. When I am on my own, it's a conversation I'm going to have with myself, and I know I'll have it, and I'll do what I think to be the right thing at that time.
Well, that's what I'm asking. So forget about I understand your circumstances. Obviously, I can't speak for your parents, but when you are on your own, you have your own decision to make, right? What do you think is more difficult? Making that minor adjustment, or maybe it's a major adjustment even in your life, or what you're paying for the animals to go through?
I would say that the harder decision ultimately would be knowing that I didn't do the right thing at the end of the day. Whether that be become fully vegan or whether it be like a full carnivore. At the end of the day, if I know I think I made the right moral choice, I feel okay. Which ultimately in this case, I tend to lean more towards I should cut things out of my life gradually.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would argue, again, if you should do it as soon as possible, because again, every time you pay, you're literally paying for animals to be exploited, bred into existence, abused, killed unnecessarily. Like, there's plenty of other food. So yeah, I mean, you're not really given a justification, so you're kind of, which is good. I mean, at least you're open to acknowledging that this is wrong. So I would urge you to really reflect, and I'll give you sources. There's tons of resources for nutrition. You could actually, through Challenge 22, you could talk to a plant-based dietitian, nutritionist, who can help you plan meals, who can help you do these things. There's documentaries. So I'll give you a card, but did you have any other questions or anything to wrap it up?
I would say I don't have any questions, but one comment. It's important to have conversations like this because, just because we're not at the same point on the spectrum right now doesn't mean we won't cross paths at some point, like tonight. And when we do, it's important that we don't punch each other in the face, but we have a good conversation. And I'm really enjoying speaking with you. And that, I feel like that's ultimately the most important thing at the end of the day is instead of yelling and screaming at each other here on the sidewalk, over a minor disagreement or even a major one. At the end of the day, screaming doesn't help. And thank you for being here and, trying to just have normal conversations with you.
I agree, man. I agree. I appreciate you stopping. And one thing I'll leave you, just keep in mind, for as long as you're not vegan, every time you purchase entertainment in the form of animal exploitation, clothing, food. You are paying for animals to be bred into existence, abused, exploited, killed on your behalf. All right, so I'll leave you with that. I'll give you a card.